Ahoy! Boredom has driven me to new extremes and I found something very interesting in the game files that I want to talk about regarding the upcoming patch. So, as many of you probably know already, the upcoming expedition is called Empyrean Forge. This was announced in the content roadmap, so we knew about this for a while already. But at the time there were more important things to focus on, so I just left it at knowing that. But it seems that around the time the roadmap was announced, there were also game files added that actually include the new expedition already. You can look up Empyrean on a New World database right now and you will find multiple quests linked to that. While the quests don't have quest tags or quest givers yet, they actually have some pieces of information linked to them, and I will tell you about that. Let's first look at the quest chain itself to see what we're actually doing here. So the quest line starts with the quest called Graceless Request, which leads to First Customer. After that you unlock two new quests. XPD Empyrean, which very obviously stands for Expedition, as well as another quest called The Curse. The Curse opens up two new quests. One of them is called Talismans 1, so this seems to be some form of temporary naming, and the other one is called Best of Eternum. After completing Best of Eternum, you get the Xander the Red quest, which leads to Cannon and Coin, which then leads to Cores 1, I guess a similar naming convention to Talismans 1 here, and Supply Chains. Completing Supply Chains unlocks Possibilities of Fire, that then unlocks Hot on the Trail, then Faceless, and then the last quest in the line here is Be My Guest. So this seems to be a completely new quest line that will come out with the expedition. It is not clear how many parts of this quest line are actually directly linked to the expedition, because on one hand, they could technically all be quests for the expedition because many of them are related to fire, and we know that the Empyrean Forge is a forge and has lava and everything, so it's gonna be pretty hot, so titles like Possibilities of Fire, Hot on the Trail would kinda match with that. But on the other hand, in this whole set, only one quest specifically has the Expedition label. And there are two additional quests that also have the Expedition label, which are Expedition Empyrean Repeat and Expedition Fire Naga. These are not linked to the other quests in this group here, but they exist alongside that. I am guessing that Expedition Empyrean Repeat is just what you unlock after you finish Expedition Empyrean. It's just not connected yet. But I could imagine that more of the quests actually lead you into the Empyrean Forge as well, and maybe you have to do something similar to Tempest, where you can complete the expedition multiple times in order to unlock more things. This would also make sense in another context. If you think back, then Tempest actually gave you a pretty solid set of corruption ward gear. If you did it multiple times, you got these chests for all types of corruption bane weapons and then corruption ward armor pieces. The devs have mentioned that the new expedition might require some gear specifically for it. We also know that this is the first part of a two-part expedition with Varangian Knights. Currently there is no ward or bane for Varangian Knights, so I would expect that we will need some form of specific gear of that type for this expedition. This could either be specifically Varangian ward or something slightly more broad like human ward. And I think it's possible that the questline is the counterpart to the Tempest questline in this very sense, that this is a questline that gives you a bunch of that new ward type and that new bane type, so that you get a good base set of gear for this expedition by running it multiple times and doing the questline. We need to go even deeper than that. Zelenin, one of the data miners of the New World database Discord, maintains updated datasheets of the most current game files. In these files we can obviously find the same quests that we can also find on New World database. Now, what's interesting here is that we get a little bit of extra information. And that is the so-called release version of these quests. And you may have noticed that I color-coded the quests in different colors, which may be weird without context. But if I show you this, then it will make a little bit more sense. Or maybe not. There are two different labels on these quests, and both of them are very interesting. They're labeled Season 1 Perm and Season 1 Temp. Now mind you, these files were added to the game around 2 months ago. There were other files for quests added after, and they don't have this label. I looked through the datamine files to see if there's any other place where this is mentioned at all, and it isn't. I've also never heard the devs refer to New World's time spans as seasons before either. Now keep in mind, this could mean nothing at all. It could be that they're just using Season 1 to indicate the first release season for 2023. The spring release is the season, the spring season, and therefore that's season 1, and we know that the Empyrean Forge is coming out in spring, and that's why it's labeled season 1. That's completely possible. But it is weird that they've never used this type of labeling before, and now they're calling it season 1, which makes me wonder if the patch itself is kind of a season thing, and they're gonna be like many other games and have some seasonal format from now on, where you get specific rewards maybe at the end of the season. I don't want to get my hopes up too much here, because again, it could literally not mean anything at all, but I think it would be a very cool model to keep people more engaged with the game as well. There is a reason why so many online games especially use season models nowadays. But on top of the season label, we also have this distinction between perm and temp, so permanent and temporary. This is very interesting to me as well, and this is where our quest line comes into play. Now, a permanent quest would just be any normal quest in the game that we currently have, whereas we do have temporary quests as of now as well. We have, for example, the quests that are with events, so they are only around as long as the event is around and then are shelved for the next year. But what is weird about these quests in particular is that they are part of a quest line together. Grace's Request is labeled as a permanent quest, whereas First Customer, the follow-up quest, is a temporary quest. That would be fine, but then the quests afterwards for quite a while, including the expedition quests, partially, are also temporary. And then further down the same quest line, if you do Grace's Request, then First Customer and then the Curse, you suddenly have a quest again that is permanent, Best of Eternum. So how is that gonna work? If some of these quests are temporary and eventually go away, then how do you get from Grace's Request to Best of Eternum? Do you just skip the other quests and their potential rewards? I don't know. Maybe some of these quests don't have their final labeling yet. Maybe they just put the Season 1 label on and didn't really check which ones should really be permanent or temporary, but it is a bit weird. This is especially true for the Expedition quest. The Expedition quest for Empyrean itself is temporary, the repeatable quest is permanent, well that makes sense at least, and then the Fire Naga quest is temporary again. I have absolutely no idea how to make sense of that, but I do think it is interesting at least. I also think it's interesting that there is a quest called Fire Naga, considering this tells us a little bit about a potential enemy in the expedition. Most expedition quests so far have typically been either kill a specific mob in the expedition, like a specific boss, or kill multiple named mobs of a similar type. So it seems like we're either getting a Fire Naga boss, or it's going to be one of the regular mobs in the expedition. This is interesting in so far that, while it makes sense in the whole fire theme, I did not expect it considering the expedition was supposed to be Varangian Knights, so it seems like we're not just going to be facing Knights. This could also mean that the Empyrean Forge is potentially a multiple different typed expedition again, where we have more than one war type required, depending on what the Naga is labeled as. We'll have to see about that. For now, I'm very excited to see what the new patch will bring, because this looks pretty promising. If you're interested in more news about the new patch, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell, because as soon as we know anything new, I will of course keep you updated. The next days we'll also break down the perks for other weapons further, and I'll also be talking about Atomic Heart a little bit when it comes out. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.